Chapter 39. It seemed that the whole family was being torn apart. Papa was making home brew again, although the repeal of prohibition was in the works. Mama was still unsettled. Flor was attending the University of Washington, had pledged a sorority, and was spending most of her time there. She had new sisters, and acted like she didn't need Dor and me anymore. Dor would be entering high school. I looked forward to a renewed companionship with her. But Dor was acting like a stranger. She announced that she was going to double up on her schoolwork and graduate in 3 years. At first, the folks were pleased with the idea. Smart daughter. Soon they realized what a load this would be for Dor. In answer to their objections, Dor made the announcement of the century. She was engaged to the fellow that had taken her to senior prom. As soon as she graduated, she was going to marry him. You can imagine what kind of reaction that brought. Papa contacted the boy's parents. They were as concerned as Papa. If he came from some hoodlum family, you could understand it, but they are highly regarded. I was bewildered, not knowing the implications of such an announcement. I had never heard of anyone being engaged. We were like a family living on an island, no extended family around, no cousins, no friends of engagement age. I was still uncertain of my loyalties. I knew that Dor was spending every possible minute with the fellow in spite of Papa's threats, yet I knew in my heart that Mama and Papa were trying to save Dor from herself. I needed another diversion. Papa came up with one. He decided that, because I had been doing so well on the accordion, I should take lessons. Flor suggests a possible teacher, a baseball player on Franklin's team. His name is Al Miletta, Flor said. He's Italian. Papa had become skeptical of baseball players. He was also skeptical of Italians, but he made arrangements to bring Al home 1 day a week. I was Al's first pupil. Papa enjoyed the lessons as much as I did. He would sit in his chair by the window that overlooked the lake and listen. Al always brought along his big Italian accordion, and after my lesson, Papa would get him to play a concert of O Solo Mio type numbers. Al loved to play, and never complained, to give me more local color. Al took me to Italian parties. He seemed proud to introduce my pupil to his 100% Italian, heavy on the Garlic family, who were surprised that a Scotch-Irish girl named Bigham could play the accordion and sing. They taught me Italian songs. I was infatuated with the Italians and their colorful speech. Al arranged for me to play 1 evening a week with an accordion band, and it wasn't long before I was singing solos. I loved it. After practice, some of the players would stop in at an Italian restaurant to eat spaghetti. It was the first time in my life that I was making friends on my own. One fellow called Jocko always seemed to be sitting close to me. He was bold and colorful, and he found ways to touch my arm or hand. Before long, he was inviting me to other parties. One night, he kissed me. My world went off its axis. I needed another diversion. Fortunately, this time Flor came up with one. That winter, she told Papa, "All the kids at the university go to Mount Rainier to ski. Can I go up with them?" Papa had long been a winter sports enthusiast. Every year, he had taken us to Snoqualmie Pass, where he taught us to ski. We watched the jumping tournaments put on by the Seattle Ski Club, a hotbed of Norwegians, who, according to Papa, had invented skiing. He told us stories of how he had learned ski jumping at the University of Wisconsin. In answer to Flor's request, he said, "We'll go skiing next Saturday at Snoqualmie Pass." Flor said, "I don't want to go to Snoqualmie Pass. I want to go to Mount Rainier." "What's wrong with Snoqualmie?" Papa asked. "Only the Norwegians go to Snoqualmie. And who goes to Mount Rainier?" "The Scotch-Irish Methodist Quaker Presbyterian University kids." The next Saturday, Papa took us to Mount Rainier. The whole trip was a fairy tale. By the time we reached the end of the road, we were driving through 15-foot walls of snow. We parked our car, and with skis over our shoulders, we started up a steep, mile-long trail that wound its way through the trees until we came out above the timberline. There sat the beautiful Paradise Lodge. Far up the side of the majestic mountain were the ski trails. It took little observation to realize that what we had learned at Snoqualmie was not what was being practiced at Mount Rainier. Papa's method had been to put on our skis at the top, ski down, jump out of the skis at the bottom, and carry them back up. Here, the skiers zoomed down at breakneck speed, swung around at the bottom, throwing up plumes of snow, and with skis still on their feet, trudged back up the mountain. "How can they walk uphill on slippery skis?" we asked. We begged to go back the next Saturday. Papa complained about the long drive. Mama complained about the long hike up the hill. Flor was not complaining. She already had a solution. All the inn kids stay there for the weekend, and they asked me to stay with them. Can I, Papa? Papa said no, because he had already figured out that most of the inn kids were boys. Besides, if you're at school all week and at the mountain all weekend, when would I see you long enough to write you a check? Fleur agreed that that would be a catastrophe. By the next weekend, Papa had bought us new skis and had rented a room in a building a short walk down the road from Paradise Lodge, not just for the night, but for the whole season. Fleur explained, "This is where the real skiers stay." Our room was just big enough for 2 beds and 1 dresser. The 1 toilet and 1 bathtub were down the hall. From the ever-present smell of chicken soup, we knew that not everyone ate in the cafeteria. Fleur informed us that the inn crowd packed their grub up in their backpacks and ate hand to mouth. Evidently, the management was aware of this as well, and had posted signs. No cooking in the rooms. It didn't take us long to find out where everyone washed their pots and pans. "It's the only bathtub I ever saw with a yellow ring," Papa said. "It's the fault of the management," Dor said. "They ought to post signs saying, 'No washing chicken soup pans in the bathtub.'" It wasn't long before our packs contained cans of chicken soup. Papa wouldn't allow a hot plate in our room, even though we suspected that every other room in the annex harbored one. We counteracted with the stock argument at Rainier. "They'll never hear about it in Washington, D.C. However, Papa stood firm. He didn't want to stray from Forest Service regulations. We had to warm our soup on the heater. However, he made one concession. He allowed us to wash our pots and pans in the bathtub. On day 1, we had worn the remnants of our Snoqualmie days, hiking boots and khaki pants. On day 2, we began campaigning for new outfits like Fleur's friends wore. On day 3, Mama took us to her favorite department store. Unfortunately, she had never heard of Eddie Bauer. The store didn't have the Melton cloth pants that tucked into ankle-high boots, but the clerk showed us corduroy pants. "It's what the girls wear in California." It should have alerted us. Everybody knows that no one skis in California. "There isn't even any snow in California," Dor reasoned. The fitting went fine for Fleur and Dor, but for me, it emphasized a situation that for some time had been causing me pain and embarrassment. I was having a hard time getting the belts of my clothes buttoned. Dor coached me, "Pull in your breath, Franny, like this." Fleur was angry. "Fran, you look like you're going to have a baby." I felt myself turning bright red. I knew that's what everyone must be thinking. Even Papa made remarks. "Frances, stand up straight and pull in your stomach." The straighter I stood, the more noticeable my stomach became. Mama looked at the waistband. "There's enough material that I can let them out." That solved the problem, at least temporarily. It took only 1 ski run to realize that our purchase was a sad mistake. The pants were so cold. We could hardly ski because we were so close to freezing to death. We also found out that they were not dye-proof. We left red, blue, and brown potholes all over the pristine white snowfields of Mount Rainier. One smart aleck whippersnapper remarked, "I spent all day on the trail of the big ham butts." When we took our bath that evening, we learned that the pristine snow was not the only thing that got dyed. From our waists down, Fleur was red, Dor was blue, and I was brown. To add insult to injury, the next guy in line yelled out, "Who left red, blue, and brown rings around the bathtub?" The next week, Mama bought us heavy wool underwear. It didn't take us long to realize that our little room was intolerably cramped. No matter how tired one might be, sleep did not come easily under a makeshift clothesline of red, blue, and brown corduroy pants and speckled underwear. To add to that problem, we knew we were in violation of the National Park Service Agreement. We knew that because the second most important sign hanging in the hallways stated, "Absolutely no more than 4 persons to a room." We girls were afraid that, if Washington, D.C. found out, it would mean immediate expulsion. Fleur came up with a solution. "I can sleep with my sorority sisters." Somehow Mama found out they were sleeping 6 or 7 to a room, and it was rumored that some of the occupants who supposedly slept on the floor were not even sisters. Dor explained. "They're sorority brothers." Fleur's solution lasted just 1 night. Papa had the solution. He rented a room at the lodge for him and Mama. How luxurious it was. 1 bed, 1 dresser, 1 chair, and a hand basin. Both Mama and Papa were skeptical about leaving us to fend for ourselves, and every night they rounded us up before they trudged through the snow to their new lodging. No horseplay now. You never saw 3 more true blue, well-mannered, Miss Snowdon-trained little ladies than the 3 little Bighams watching their elders depart. Sleep tight, Mama and Papa dear. Now for the horseplay. Before all the dye had run out of our corduroy pants, we were skiing like experts, and had observed that some of the real-in girls wore knickers made of a closely woven wool material. Mama announced, "They would be easy to sew." We still hadn't heard of Eddie Bauer. Papa said, "You can make them out of the dark blue gabardine." Gabardine? Just the word caused convulsions. Of course gabardine, that's what the in-girls' pants are made of. There's a bolt of it left from the fire sale. We set to work sewing our own. Papa called the in-girls' knickers plus fours, and since we had oodles of material, we decided to add a few inches and make ours plus eights. What a sensation they were. When we tore down the hills, our plus eights flapped like 4th of July flags on a radiator cap. After 2 runs, they had lost the smell of smoke and mothballs. We were in. Before long, we were aware of a further in. We found this out during evenings in the Annex Lounge, when the skiers gathered around the big old stove to discuss the weather, snow conditions, day's events, and a subject we knew little about, the cabins which were buried deep in the snow below the annex. Some of the best skiers stayed in these cabins, and they made frequent remarks about the adventures and hazards. I don't know how they stand up under this huge amount of snow. Gosh, the rafters in mine look like stays of an umbrella after a windstorm. By spring, Fleur had talked Papa into renting a Park Service cabin for the next season. On our first trip in the fall, we were elated. We had never seen the area without a blanket of snow. The steep-roofed cabins with their small windows and long, spindly stovepipes were set like a small village below the annex. We followed the winding road through groups of stunted trees. The whole picture exuded the feeling of community. Yippee! This was the ultimate of being in. Our cabin was reported to be identical to every other cabin in the group. 1 door, 1 room, 1 rusty stove, 1 sink, 1 drain board, 1 shelf, 1 drop-leaf table, 2 beds, and 4 chairs. At the first inspection, Papa found it hard to understand that the Park Service could allow the cabins to be rented out in the winter. "Flimsy construction," he exclaimed, "obviously built for summer tourist trade." In spite of the signs that warned of the penalties for altering government property, Papa hired a carpenter from Tacoma. For several days they worked, reinforcing ceiling timbers, installing braces, and converting the beds into bunks. All fall, Papa was like a kid again. He had given up making home brew when Prohibition had been repealed in December of 1933, and it appeared that the doctor's report about the dangers of processing may have been the cause of his problems. His joints were better, although he had to guard against bumping or twisting them, which was easy to do if he had too much of the new beer. Although it was said that the 3.2% alcohol content of the beer was not enough to cause drunkenness, there seemed to be any number of people available to test the statement. Mama liked going up in the fall, too. The road went right to the cabin door, so it was easy to take in supplies. Surprisingly, all this activity seemed to be good for Mama. Although she was still overweight, her perpetual problem, she was feeling and looking better. Papa enjoyed kibitzing with the occupants of the other cabins, young men, mostly students at the University of Washington, who soon learned that he always had plenty of crackers, cheese, and 3.2 beer. "Students haven't much money," he explained. In the beautiful, crisp fall weather, much of their talk was focused on the coming snow. They told of harrowing experience of getting into and out of cabins in the dead of winter, and of being snowed in. It obviously worried Papa. Finally, he conceived the idea of building an entrance tower. He discussed it with the carpenter. "I figure if I make it 20 feet high, it will handle any snowfall we might have." The carpenter was skeptical, not about the structure's capabilities, but about regulations. "What about the Park Service?" Papa laughed. "They'll never hear about it in Washington, D.C. No, but the management will. They'll see it out of every window in the annex. We won't be attaching it to the cabin, and we won't be altering the cabin in any way. It'll be portable." We girls considered it a monstrosity, especially after the cabin community began calling it Reverend Bigham's Baptist Church. We complained bitterly, "Why does he have to come up with his dumb ideas and make us the laughingstock?" Yeah, like he ruined our boat, and filled up our bathroom with his steam bath, and made us wear water wings on the surfboard, and tied us to a rope when we went into the ocean. We just want to dig in and have harrowing experiences like the other guys. In due season, the snow came, covering the ground and creeping up the sides of the cabins, past the windows, past the doors, past the eaves. Finally, what had been a village was now a field of snow, unbroken except for the little capped stovepipes and the tops of the scrubby trees. The only structure visible was the top of our tower, which now looked like a little outhouse in the middle of nowhere. Folks suggested that we put a cross on top to avoid it being mistaken as such. Entering the cabin through the dark tower was a tricky maneuver. From the small side door, we stepped directly onto the descending ladder of wooden rungs nailed onto the uprights. Even under the best of circumstances, this was not much clearance for the toes. But here we were in stiff-soled, big-toed, ice-caked boots. Add to this the fact that we were snowblind, had on frozen mittens, and backpacks filled with cans of chicken soup. Our neighbors made predictions. "You're going to have lots of guys falling down that thing." Papa was the first one to fulfill the prophecy, and we all joined him in time. Our falls were not only painful, but spectacular. Invariably, we landed on the gunny sacks of coal at the bottom, which made us look like the performers in a minstrel show. No matter how much we warned our guests of the pitfalls, the percentages never went down. Being baptized into Mr. Bigham's Baptist Church was one of the hot topics around the big stove. The biggest drawback to staying in the cabins was their lack of bathroom facilities. We had to hike up to the basement of the annex. The journey was the source of much discomfort, although we soon learned an important new sense called timing. The cabin dwellers claimed they knew exactly how long they had between takeoff and touchdown, but Dor, true to form, threw my timing off. When we were headed out for urgent business, she would wait until we were 10 feet from the annex, then run ahead, jump inside, and lock the door. My only recourse was to trudge through the snow in a state of extreme desperation, around the side of the building to the only other door on the lower side. Dor learned the trick to that. She would be waiting inside the locked door, sticking out her tongue. I complained loudly, as did some of the other tenants who didn't appreciate arriving at a door that the little Bigham brat had forgotten to unlock. She received repeated warnings from both Papa and the management, but she continued until one bitter cold day. I was in such agony that I thrust my fist through the window. The glass flew everywhere. As the story circulated throughout the annex, I became somewhat of a hero. Sporting a big bandage on my hand, folks said, "I guess you won't be playing the accordion for a while." A mixed blessing, no doubt. I was surprised that Papa didn't blame me. Dor, however, was taken aside and given the what for. Papa committed himself to replacing the window. "We can't have Washington, D.C. hearing about this,"